What makes a musician a musician?
That's a tough question. Actually, no, it's not. Kind of is.
What do you think makes a musician a musician?
I think someone that is able to take constructive criticism and use it to better themselves, and a musician, they have to have the drive as well to kind of achieve.
Like, will one need to know how to play instruments and know how to, know all the music theory, how to read music, all that stuff to be a musician?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a broad question. Let's start here. Do you need to play an instrument to be a musician? Because we have a lot of people now that aren't really playing instruments.
Myself.
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm. And then we have people that do play instruments, but where do we draw the line at? Where's a musician?
I mean, because I consider myself a musician, but at the same time, I know a lot of people who don't consider me a musician. They consider me a musical artist or a producer. Yeah, it's a fair criticism.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I kind of feel like the way how it is just anyone who's kind of like made a song, but they also have that drive and they're still trying to achieve to better themselves. They can call themselves a musician. Like, there has to be a level of skill kind of involved before you, like, when I was first starting out, I wasn't comfortable calling myself a musician. But as I kept getting better, I realized there was a lot of passion that kept me moving forward with it. And I feel like that's when I started to turn around and realize this is what I'm working towards. That's when I considered myself a musician.
Yeah.
I guess denotatively, technically speaking, to be a musician is one who plays instruments and creates music. But I'd say I agree with what Brian said, as in because of technology, we don't actually have to, learn particular instruments. But I would say there's a certain level of knowledge. I don't think that knowledge directly has to be academic. So you don't really have to know scales and all that jazz, but I recommend if you are playing instruments, you should have some knowledge of it.
Like, would you call somebody that's just a singer, but like a songwriter, a musician?
No, I'd call them a singer-songwriter.
See, that's where it's a little strange, because if you're a songwriter, you have something that's kind of keeping you writing that song, like skill. It might not be music theory or any of that. Some people might have the music theory, because I know a lot of people that, they took the classes, all that, they enjoyed it, try to apply it to their songwriting abilities. But all in all, it's just... No,
I feel you. I feel like it's safe to say, though, that if you, I feel like for most people who aren't, like, tone deaf, most people have, like, a rough understanding of music theory just off of knowledge of what sounds good.
Mm-hmm. They use their ear to kind of move around.
Yeah, when a chord is discordant. If when things aren't supposed to be lined up, and if you know how to use that. Like, I'm not gonna pretend like I'm a genius on music theory or anything. Welcome to Outrospection. This is our podcast. If you don't know that this is a podcast, then you've probably clicked the wrong link on YouTube.
If you don't know this is a podcast, then you'd probably be very confused and should have probably clicked away by now, or you're high. So,
or maybe perhaps you're high and you're just listening.
Just look around on the internet.
Yeah. We're here with somebody who is undeniably a musician in every right, Mr. Brian Shull.
Thank you. My name is Brian. I'm part of the band Whüzy. I play guitar in there.
Mm-hmm. He's like, when I say undeniably a musician, like, he knows he does it all. He plays the guitar. He plays he can play some keys a little bit. He can work around that. He plays the drums. He songwrites. He sings a little bit. He produces.
Jack of all trades kind of stuff.
Really, he's like one of the most musical people that I know.
Renaissance man.
I don't know about that, but
no, genuinely.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I always consider myself a musician. I can play the piano a little bit. I can read music a little bit, but I know how to make music. I know how to write chords. I know how to write chord progressions. I know how to write songs, write lyrics. I mean, but I understand people who don't consider me a musician. I'm not like classically trained. I can't like, if you were to put me in front of a piano and put me in front of some sheet music and say play, I would probably be like.
Well, I know what you mean. I would consider you a musician. Just because, like how you're saying, you work with these beats, you make a lot of songs, and you know how to put it together. You know when something's off, like you were saying earlier in the intro. But I feel like these traits are what define us as musicians.
Hayden, what would you say? Would you consider me a musician?
Because you have the ability to play the piano to an extent. You know,
If I couldn't play the piano, but I could still do everything else that I do, would you consider me a musician?
honestly, probably not.
Interesting.
I think I think to be a musician, and because there's a lot of words to describe that kind of category and career in that artistic realm, but to be a musician for me in particular, and kind of the way I learned what a musician was, involves some level of instrumentation and being able to play an instrument to an extent and understand some of the knowledge. But I would not say that excludes you from being a singer-songwriter, or excludes you from being a musical artist, or excludes you from being a producer. Those things can all happen without actually having to play the instrument.
Yeah, there's like different labels for it. Like you can be an instrumentalist, musician, vocalist, songwriter.
I
singer.
mean, but my thought about this is that I always consider the DAWs that I work on to be instruments, even though they're not technically instruments. But like, I can make music with them.
Oh yeah, all the MIDI, all that, putting it out on the piano roll. Again, it requires a level of knowing what you're doing.
Yeah,
that's true.
What makes an instrument an instrument?
When Brian's playing the guitar, he has the guitar in his hands and he is playing it to make that particular sound. That involves that certain level of dexterity and control and pre-conceptualization to make that into that sound from basically nothing into something, whereas you're taking a thing that exists and this is ones and zeros already, and then you're rearranging it to be another thing, which sounds good and which is all amazing and stuff, but there is a different level of cognitive thought and different level of subcognitive thought in what Brian is actually doing with his hands and like below his conscious and with his conscious than what you're doing with your mouse and key and
an
program.
Instrument, it involves both mental and physical capabilities, where you're saying with a computer it's mostly just mental, knowing what you need to put down.
There's a gap in knowledge, so he has to know how to play the guitar to put a guitar track on, right?
So what would we say about like a MIDI controller, something like like piano you'd plug in?
Yeah, because Kanye West will take the MPC controller and play it on stage, like he'll have it on a podium.
I'd count that.
Yeah, I'd say that's an
I could do
instrument.
that. I've done that before.
Because that's an instrument.
You get this. It's weird because you get the same end result when you click in the notes or when you play it. If you get it really close and similar. But when it comes down to it, yeah, lost my train of thought again.
So will we consider the human voice an instrument?
No, I'd consider it then you're a singer, or if you just write songs, and so like you're just a songwriter. I would say that there's a gap because yes, I'd say the human voice is an instrument, but it's not an instrument to call yourself an instrumentalist. If you're just a singer, then you're a singer.
Because this is an interesting thought that I've always had about the human voice. I feel like the human voice, I've always considered the human voice also to be an instrument, because like in order to be a singer and in order to actually be able to like sing very, very, very well, you need to put in the amount of time that you will put into playing any instrument. It requires practice, a lot of practice. It requires conditioning. You need to make sure that the same way that you would need to make sure that your guitar is in tune, you need to make sure that you're warming up your voice, because you can lose it. Just like if you don't play an instrument, if you don't play the piano every day, then when you get in front of a piano after a while, it's not going to come out the same. If you're not singing every day, if you're not warming up your voice every day, it's not going to come out. It's not going to come out the same. The way you project, the way that you sing, it requires a whole lot of physical skill to be able to do that. Because I'm not going to say that there's a right way to sing, but there is a formula to singing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of technique that comes into that.
Yes.
So, I don't know. I would be willing to call the human voice an instrument.
I'd say it's an instrument, but I would say if you just sing and you're like an excellent singer, right, but all you do is sing, you're a singer. You're not a musician or an instrumentalist. You're a singer. We have a word for that for a reason.
I mean, yeah, but you would call a guitarist a musician.
Yeah, because the guitarist is playing an instrument.
So a singer
is a singer.
I think a good definition, because I really like the idea of the voice being an instrument, but I feel like an instrument is something that's played.
Yeah.
But by singing and knowing how to sing, like hitting notes correctly when you're singing is playing an instrument.
I guess
if you really think about it, like it's one thing to make the sounds come out of your mouth. Anybody can pick up a guitar and make sounds come off of it. But in order to actually sing correctly, even if you know the notes in your head, in order to actually sing and hit the notes within a certain frequency and to sing them at a certain pitch, requires a level of dexterity, and requires a level of physical dexterity as well as mental dexterity. There's a lot of variables that has to go into you think about how you're breathing.
Because you said that, I think what I'm willing to say is that a singer probably is considered a musician because of the degree of skill, and I feel like it's still not necessarily an instrument, even though I want to call it.
I mean, I'll be willing to call it an instrument, and I'm not about to go out here and say that everyone that sings is an instrumentalist, but like I don't know. I think it's an interesting thought process.
Oh yeah.
I think that there's a line between being like a singer, like you can be a background singer and know how to sing and know how to sing like that, and not be a musician, I'd say.
I mean, but there are rhythm guitarists.
There are people that just sing to sing, you know.
I mean, but there are people who just play the guitar or play the ukulele. Like people, there are plenty of people who just pick up a ukulele and start playing that.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of what I was hinting at when I was talking about Brian playing the guitars. There's that level of like he has a mastery of this thing and he can just create from it. Like he doesn't like it's not like he's like, you know, that one girl on campus with like a ukulele that plays like 5 songs, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, that's so with someone that plays the ukulele like that just picks it up, would they be a musician?
I think at first they wouldn't. Like I was saying, when I was first starting, I didn't feel I was a musician, but I think they can achieve it if they work towards it. And
I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, you're all good.
But the label of musician also implies a level of practice and a level of
comprehension.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of on both sides of the thing, but I think it's an interesting way to look at it. I know I consider myself a musician by the virtue of the fact that I create music.
Do you guys want to know like the actual like definition of a musician is? Since I just looked it up while you're talking. A person who plays a musical instrument, especially as profession, or is musically talented. So basically, it's the most broad
or is musically talented.
Exactly.
Term
there you
ever.
go.
Like,
I got it.
I was gonna say, when you opened it up, it was a little broad.
That's
of
very
a
broad.
question.
Or
But
is
that's a good
musically
topic.
talented. Musically talented, that's a super broad
That is
term.
incredibly broad.
There are plenty of people who are musically talented that don't. So I don't know. I don't know if I like that definition, because there are plenty of people who are musically talented that I would never call musicians.
Can you give an example?
A bunch of kids that I know that can, like people who can pick up the ukulele and just play it like that.
Mm-hmm. Who play like their little love songs are the ones about volcanoes, and then they're like, "I'm cool now, right?"
Yeah, I don't know if I'm necessarily immediately gonna call them a musician. I feel like in order to call yourself a musician, you have to like have an interest. You have to like, I think you have to have a little bit of a deeper connection to the creation or mastery of playing the music.
And that's not to say that you can't get there if you're just playing ukulele right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can find the encouragement to keep getting better and become a musician through that. Or if you just want to just sit and play ukulele, you know, that's your thing.
There's no shame in that. That's true.
Not at all.
Yeah. I think that was an interesting way to start this off, guys.
Yeah.
How's everyone doing today?
I'm alive, clinically.
Yep.
I'm
I'm
also clinically alive. Brian, you're clinically alive as well?
Check this morning.
I feel like that's a nice place to kind of start off everything with being clinically alive.
Will we all be clinically alive by the time I'm done editing this? Is the real question.
I guess we'll have to find out.
You can make it through it.
If you guys can make it in like the next like 4 or 5 days, I think we'll be good, and it won't be a memorial episode for any of us.
What's the longest session that you've had doing something like that?
Oh gosh, I think the longest time it took me to edit one of these episodes was either 2 or 3, because on average I'd say they take 2 hours, because we record I'd say on average we record an hour 15 minutes of content per each session is the general average, and I cut out about 15 minutes of that.
I see.
Yeah, I feel like the longest. Would you say the longest was the one that had that when Marvin came on the Soup and Sandwiches episode?
Yeah, just because of it's either that or the Catriarchy, I'd say, because the Catriarchy is, I think, to this day still our longest episode, and we had a lot of stuff in the Catriarchy that never saw the light of day.
Mm-hmm.
But
like what?
That was in January. You can't hold me to remember stuff like that.
Okay.
And I edited it for a reason, and I feel like my brain also represses out the dumb things that I have to edit out, just so I don't feel embarrassed when thinking about it.
I feel you.
It's all good, as long as you're being yourself.
Yeah. And then with Soup and Sandwiches, that one was that was the first time I'd really handled with the 3 people talking, which now it's going to be easier because I have experience with it, and I have way more experience even then because that was only our 3rd episode. That one took a little bit of time. And I think that one I just sat on a lot because I was super busy around that time toward like the end of January, early February. A lot of stuff was going on in my life.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
I was just thinking like how that compares to like when I'm working on a song on the DAW. Takes me probably like it depends, because sometimes I just sit there and I'll listen to it over and over, like, what can I add in, what can I change, what can I put here. But I'd say it takes me roughly around, like, if I am loving the song, like 12 hours. I've done things in, like, 6 hours, shorter times, but it depends on how much time I really want to put into it, how much I like the song, what I plan to do with it. But a good song will take me at least a day or two.
Yeah, no, I feel you. It kind of just depends on where the inspiration is coming from at any given time, though, I think, too.
Yeah, your inspiration level.
Sometimes you'll sit in front of a computer. I mean, I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll sit in front of the computer and have, like, a rough idea of some stuff, and then hit a point where it's just like, what the fuck do I do next?
Yeah, and that's where you're just listening to it over and over in your mix.
And
like,
you're just like, yeah, I like this song, I like this. And then it gets to the point where it's just like all the instruments you've programmed cut out, and then it ends, and you're like, I know something else has to happen here.
But you just don't know what.
Yeah. That's how I am with a few of my songs.
How do you get over that kind of block?
Sometimes it depends. Sometimes I will just listen to it a whole bunch and try a bunch of different things, or sometimes I'll let it sit and then come back to it. Like, I had one song that I was working on that I recorded. I recorded like the whole first half, and then I started working on the second half, and everything I was doing was fucking garbage, like legitimately garbage, and I just put it down. And then like maybe like 6 months later, I opened it back up and listened to it, and the second half came to me in like 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's definitely happened to me. It goes to show that our ears, they definitely do get fatigued over time while we're mixing or working on anything. It's good to just sit back, take a break, come back to it maybe in a few days. It doesn't have to be the next day, but as long as you keep that thought in your head, like, hey, I have this song idea that I want to get going, you'll find the drive to get up the next day and work on it.
Brian, you are in a band, correct?
Yes, I am.
What's your band called?
Whüzy, it's hard to really describe the genre because we just take what chords we like, put them together. We don't really have a direction when it comes to that. All the songs, they turn out matching because they're written by the same people. But we never really sit down and think, oh, this is going to be like a rock song today, or like, let's make this one more pop. It's just whatever comes out.
So that name Whüzy, where did that come from?
It actually came from a friend of ours. Her name is Kat. She's really cool. But she is dating Marty. Marty is our singer. And the way how that worked is we were just sitting, we couldn't think of a name, and she's like, what about Whüzy? And we decided to go for that.
I feel you. I feel like that's a nice way to kind of come up with some things, just, pull things out of thin air.
That's basically what Michael and I do. We sat there for about like a 15-minute phone call, I think. Or maybe we were in person. We were just like, all right, what the fuck are we going to name this podcast?
It was a phone call, I remember.
It was a phone call.
No, it's best to just bring out stuff.
I think Outrospection really, really, really hit it right on the nose, though, because we both kind of knew, like, when we hit it, it was like, yeah, this is going to be Outrospection.
No, it's a nice name.
You can always tell as soon as the right thing slides into place or comes up that that's the way it was supposed to be.
So I understand that you're currently working on a project right now.
Yes, I am. We're working on getting our EP going. We have 6 songs on it. It's kind of cool because lots of the writing is split between me and Marty for the songs. I really like doing that because, like, ever since we've gotten together with the band, it'd be I write a song and he writes a song, I write a song, he writes a song, and it's always kept that pattern. We've always just kept coming out with songs at the same rate, and I'm really glad that our EP can reflect that.
So do you have, like, a title for it right now?
This is the stuff I don't know if I was going to talk about it, but I'll put it out on here. We were working on the title. We came up with a few ideas, like we're planning going for like maybe a late April, maybe even mid-May release. I want it to come out around the summertime. What we're thinking is maybe like Summer Nights. That's kind of the vibe that the music gives off, is just like everyone's just hanging out on a summer night.
Yeah, and we heard the single that you guys released, the single Windows.
Windows, yes. That was a song that I actually wrote. That was probably the second song or the third one I wrote for Whüzy.
Is that song going to be on the project?
That one will be on the project. I'm actually going through and remixing that one entirely. I like the one that we have on Spotify, but I feel like I've grown a lot since I recorded that one, because we recorded that one way back ago, probably like half a year, and that's still a lot of time to kind of grow. I feel I can go back at it again better, and hopefully everyone likes the new version that comes out.
Yeah, it's like do you ever have the moment where you're working on music and you're working on your songs, and then you put it down, work on some other songs, and then you go back to the song that you were planning to put on the project, and because of the amount of time that you've been working on these other songs, like you start to develop and advance a little bit more with what you've been doing, you start to get better, so you go back to look at the song that you were going to put on the project, and you're like, now I have to catch this one up to speed.
Oh yeah, that didn't happen with this album, because like Windows was recorded before we had the idea of the EP. We just wanted to put something out there so people had something to hear from us. But with the EP coming out, I see it as a good opportunity to go back and do that. But I've had that happen before with previous bands that I've been in, where we've just like finished and then one song was just kind of below the bar, and we just start from scratch. And sometimes that's the best thing you can do, even though if it takes a lot of time. I know recording's not the funnest thing ever, but it will be one of the best feelings when you finish it and you can finally just hear your work and it's all up to the level that you want it to.
Yeah, I definitely know that feeling because I'm working on a project right now as well. I'm not gonna get too much into that because it's all under wraps, but it's gonna be pretty cool, I think.
I talked about my under wraps stuff. Nah, you're all good.
I can talk about it if you want to know anything. What y'all want to know about the project?
Well, first off, like, is this going to be a smaller type of?
I think it's going to be a full length project.
Cool.
I'm not too quick to call it an album just because I feel like there's a whole lot of weight behind that.
I think it's an album.
I mean, for all intents and purposes, that's what it is.
Oh yeah. Quick question, I guess, since it kind of came up, but we were talking about the differences in music. Difference between an EP and an album.
So the thing about music, right, is that now that we're in the digital era, these labels that we put on songs and on projects don't mean shit at all anymore. Like an EP, there are 6-song EPs and there are 9-song EPs, like King of the World, for example, and then there are 6 or 7-song albums.
Exactly.
So it really all depends on what you want to call it. I call those 2 EPs because that's really what they were. They were extended plays. There were some songs that I put together that I wanted to put out that I recorded in a relatively short amount of time. The whole time that I was recording those, I was also working on the project that I'm working on right now.
Yeah, it's kind of what the artist just wants to call it, EP
like
or album.
A lot of songs on Hunt specifically, because if you don't know, a friend of mine produced the King of the World EP, but a lot of songs that I'm working on for this project, a lot of songs that ended up on Hunt were songs that were supposed to be on this project before I really knew where I wanted to go with it. But I'm at a place right now where I feel like I know for sure like the direction that I want to go with everything that I'm trying to do with this project, and I feel like that's a really gratifying place to be, because once you get there, once you have like all the songs that you want to make, all the like rough ideas figured out and like sketched out, then you have an idea of where you want to, of how you can move forward with it.
This is exciting because this is my thing. I'm technically going to be executive producing the short film or whatever it turns out being that accompanies this album and the album itself. So
yeah, nice. He's here to help me stay on track with this whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are like your duties while you do that, like as an executive?
Logistics, timing, communication. Basically, Michael is a very, very, very creative person who's very emotionally conscious in that way and is good at getting his emotion onto these songs. But his attention span is rather low, and his work ethic is also of needed improvement. But
I feel like my work ethic is strong. It's just not strong. It's just not easy to apply it to a myriad of things at will.
Yeah, I mean, I see it when it comes to music. Like you always come up to me like, "I got a new track," and I love that.
Yeah, I'm consistently making music, but consistently making music like to try and fit a certain schedule is a little bit more difficult. And so I have Hayden on board. Hayden's really a big member of my creative team overall, just because logistically he kind of helps keep things together and keep things on track.
I'm an organized person, so I help spread the organization. It's kind of how it works with the podcast too, because Michael and I share about, I'd say half the ideas come from me, half the ideas come from you.
Yeah.
But a lot, and he did more. He was very much so more in tune with the design of the whole podcast and our sort of color scheme and our logo and stuff like that. But I am more in tune with our logistical aspects, our marketing aspects, our more computer stuff, are the more like kind of nitty-gritty, hands-on little edity stuff that you kind of have to work on. And that's kind of how this project is going to work as well too, where he's, the top artist of talent, ultimately the artist here. But I have those good logistical organization task management skills that'll help out.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to have people around you that are like, helping to push things along.
Oh yeah, whenever you're forming like a team for a band or for media, anything like that, you want to have people that are going to complement your weaknesses that you have.
Yeah.
And I think I don't challenge your creativity. I think that this podcast also works well because, and you mentioned this when you were thinking of bringing me on as executive producer, I won't really challenge your creativity. I'm really okay with people that I work with doing whatever the fuck they want with their creative projects. I'm just here to help you get it done because that's what I like
feel
doing.
Like that's often kind of been my friendship with Hayden, is that I'll be really up sometimes, just like across the board. Like I'm a relatively like either all the way turned up or all the way turned down person, and Hayden kind of like levels it out.
Mm-hmm.
No, so, I see what you mean. The way how I could apply that with my situation is me and Marty, like when we were first starting the band, the way how it was like sometimes we would agree and then we disagree on a few things just about each other's songs, and eventually what we ended up doing is we're like, hey, we're on the same side here, it's best to just kind of compromise, figure out what has to be done with this, and we'll get going through it. And that's really led to a lot of the success we've had with this EP specifically. Mm-hmm. But I just appreciate anyone that could just, be like, hey, that's your point. This is my point. Let's think together on which one can, help us succeed a bit more.
This whole podcast is just a long series of compromises.
Yeah.
Life is a big series of compromises.
That is all facts, no printer, right there, ladies and gentlemen.
That's some of the truest shit that has ever been said.
Like that, life is all about compromising between all your people in your life.
Indeed, it is.
Mm-hmm.
So the project I'm working on right now is very much focused on duality. It's very much focused on the King of the World was very up, Hunt was very down, and I want this project to kind of like be in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
You can hear that musically, and I from what I've heard of this project so far, I'd say, like, from what I've heard, but we've only really gotten the first half, which is more of the down part, I'd say. Yeah,
we haven't really. I can't get it too much into the project just because there's so much stuff that still needs to be done. I don't want to put anything on wax and then it ultimately changes, because I'm at a point where I'm like 90% positive that this is the direction that I want to go. But like I might wake up one day and say, fuck this, I'm going to do something else. And then I don't want to be bound to anything that I've said. So
you don't want to commit.
Yeah, but yeah. I know fuck you, Hayden. I know what I want to do. I know what I want to create. The reason that I've been so quiet about the project, cuz I've always been working on it. The reason I've kept it so quiet and that I've kept everything that I've been doing for this particular project so quiet as opposed to for Hunt and for King of the World, even though for Hunt I took a long hiatus before I started putting things out for that. For King of the World, I was relatively vocal about being actively working on it. No, wait, it was a hiatus before King of the World. For Hunt, the point is that I was more vocal about what was going on with the projects, and for the reason I've been so quiet about this one is just because I want to make sure that I know that when I say what I'm going to say about the project, that it's concrete.
And that's exactly kind of how I feel. If you're an artist, it's good to be quiet about your work. It gives you a lot more leeway. That means, like, if there was something, like, we were talking about redoing songs earlier. Mm-hmm. If you need to do that and you haven't set a release date, you got a lot more time. So
yeah, just
because you feel like, hey, I don't have anything out there, you don't need to rush it and start putting a release date and driving up the hype. You want to do that after you're getting close to getting done, and then you're going to put your hype up.
Yeah. So, musically, who do you think is your biggest influence?
My biggest influence, it changes so often.
As of this moment, like right now.
As of this moment, I'm really big on this one band. I can't remember where they're from, but
what are they called?
They're called Paul Cherry. It's a lot of their songs have inspired me in a way to kind of just try different chords than what I'm used to. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, you write songs and it's like two major chords and the minor chords, but there's a whole nother world of chords out there, ninths, sevenths, all the crazy numbers I can just name off right now, C's sustaining, whatever chord, But lots of the influence I look for is people that go outside the box. I want to take an idea of this pool of chords that people use and use it to kind of formulate my own in my own style and kind of change it up and make it different.
Yeah, like sometimes I know that like when I was first making music, all the chords that I were writing were very like very simple melodies and stuff like that. And then it got to a point where I was starting to do different things. I was starting to move certain things up the octaves. In between within chord progressions, like go up and down octaves within chord progressions. Be really expressive about chords I could use some chords that are discordant.
Yes.
To kind of plant it more in humanity, because I feel like a lot of people who make music put a lot of emphasis on trying to make everything be perfect in an effort to try and make my music more human. I look for ways that I can break from the idea of perfection.
Brian, what would you say if you could name 3 artists, bands, whatever, that you'd say have inspired you the most throughout your entire life, or just ones that you feel an attachment to, that you can attach part of your musical creativity to?
They're all going to be very different.
That's good. That means you have a wide range.
Yeah, bands like King Gizzard, Mild High Club, all that kind of just relaxing music. But weirdly enough, when it comes to like soloing, all that, I really like Bradley Noel from Sublime.
Really?
Yes, like just his guitar playing and style. It's not the most melodic in terms, but it's always just crazy, and it goes outside the box sometimes. But he always brings it back to just the craziness. Like I'm thinking of like Eben, if you guys know the song at all, but there's like a really crazy guitar solo that they have in there.
Yeah.
And that inspired me when I was younger. When it comes to solos, like if you just think about some Bob Marley songs, I think it's Is This Love? They have, or it might be just the solo in one of the live versions of No Woman No Cry. Great guitarist. But I love that just clean tone, jazzy sound sometimes. And that, a lot of jazz inspires me. I wouldn't say I'm a jazz musician by any means, but I like taking influence from that. I just made it sound like Bob Marley's jazz. I know he's reggae.
Yeah, I was about to be like, what?
But some of like the tones, the guitar tones, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The warmth, all that,
It's
that
very,
reminds me
very jazz
of it. Yeah, it kind of goes hand in hand. But that's the cool thing about reggae is they borrow a lot from other genres as well as being its own thing, and that's why I like it.
I feel like being sonically eclectic, being like having a whole lot of different influences, is really an important thing. Cause you know, if you don't know that I make rap music, then you know nothing about me. Like we all know that I make rap music, but at the same time, I also draw a whole lot of influence from artists like Frank Ocean, Bon Iver, Pink Floyd. I try and listen to as much music as I can. Draw as much influence from as many different places as I can, because I feel like every time I hear new music, like music that immediately influences me is music that when I hear it, it makes me feel like I need to start making music. Like not necessarily that sounds like that, but like that makes me. There's some music that as soon as I hear it, it will just kind of become a piece of the sound that I'm working on. Like FKA Twigs, for example. Have you ever heard of her?
Yes. Yeah.
When I first heard the EP1 that she released, a big piece of that kind of started to pull me in more of an electronic direction, and then when I started listening to artists like Pink Floyd pulls me in certain directions.
Oh, that's another big influence I have to throw down.
Yeah, I can hear the Pink Floyd influence in a lot of your music. Kanye West is a huge one for me because of how eclectic he is.
Oh yeah, a lot of his early stuff that I used to listen to, I like that. The mid stuff I liked a lot too.
I think this is an interesting seg. I made Hayden listen to all the Kanye albums.
So I'm just going to go through them now. So here I'm going to give a broad thing, and I think it's good that Brian's here because Brian is going to be the unbiased third party who has not
boy.
But it's great. You
right.
always need an unbiased third party in all discussions.
Yes.
So what happened is in Michael and I's friendship, Michael, who kind of with Pink Floyd, I think is when I first know of him doing this, but he's probably done this with other artists, definitely. He listened to all of their albums, chronological order.
That's literally every time I listen to a new artist, I don't like listen to their whatever album is like popping at the time. Like I'll like, oh, this album's out, let me go listen to the other ones before I can get into this. It helps to have context for what you're going into.
You get to see the growth that they had throughout each album.
Exactly.
And so once Michael was finished with his Pink Floyd, which I was talking to him kind of through, he's like, hey, Hayden, I don't listen to all the Prince albums. And so I'm like, okay, sure. So what I did is I took some time and I kind of went through, because I'm very familiar with basically all of Prince's music and all of his studio albums, because Michael had some requirements. He didn't want any live albums and he wanted to keep it to generally.
I'm not a huge fan of live music, like, on record.
Which is a shame, but that's beyond the point.
I agree.
You agree? You agree?
Yeah.
It's like if I'm listening to a concert, then just because, like, I don't know if you feel this, but like I'm super, and like Hayden knows that I do this all the time when I listen to stuff. I'm super like picky about mixes.
Exactly.
And, like,
I can feel
like
that.
I can hear when someone's using a condenser microphone, not condenser, dynamic microphone, when they should be using a condenser microphone. And it's like it works on some songs, like Purple Rain is live, but for example.
But that song's so edited, it might as well be.
I mean, there are good dynamic microphones.
Yeah, there are good dynamic
SM
microphones, but
7B.
it's like the way that people.
Sorry, I'm just shouting out gear.
Yeah,
We're not endorsed.
Brian's a super hardcore like audiophile.
I guess I am. I just know the stuff.
He
I had to
what
learn it.
He knows what he's doing. But like when people, there's a different energy when people perform on stage where it's like it's not polished in a certain way, and that's cool if you're watching the live performance or if you're at a live performance. But if I'm just listening to it, I kind of prefer like a little bit of
cleanliness.
Yeah, cleanliness, a little bit of neatness, so that when I see them on stage, then I understand where the deviation is coming in.
And I think I'm gonna mention this before we get back into the actual topic of the thing. Michael and I'd say the differences in our taste in music come essentially from a big kind of sound difference that we have. Rashad is very much so into what he called himself headphone music. So it's music that you put headphones on and you listen to, and it sounds clean, and it kind of hypnotizes you into that state of kind of like that relaxed.
Just crank your volume up and listen to it.
Yeah, but Michael also has this thing that these are his words that he uses, called knockout punches with lines. So say someone's rapping and they'll deliver a line and it hits a certain note in his head, and he says it's like watching someone. It's like a knockout punch.
Yeah, it's like for example, the most immediate example that comes to my head is in the song Monster by Kanye West. I always try and write KOs if I want a song to hit a certain way. Like the first and last lines of any verse, I feel like are the most important when you're rapping. Whatever you say in between, that's what will keep me like listening. But like the way that you orchestrate the first and last lines of a song, it's like you have a chance to bookend it, and you have a chance to like make people remember what you just said. And if you start off a verse really strong but you don't end it really strong, then it's like it kind of just trails out and you don't really remember what they were saying. And if you end a song really strong but you don't start it really strong, then it's hard for them to have even connected in the first place.
Mm-hmm. And so that's Michael's whole thing. I feel like a lot of the music that Rashad enjoys is centered around those kind of things. But with me, I describe my intake of music and how I describe it as I'm into more of what causes like a physical reaction almost. So like I like dance music a lot. I like music that makes me want to get up and move. I also like music that feels like there's a release. So like there's like a song that kind of builds up the tension and builds until there's a point where it just like there's a tidal wave that comes over, and then all the energy is released, and it's the high point of the song, and then you're there, and it kind of induces that state. So I describe it as like Michael has kind of like the like not Sigmund Freud, but like the pocket watch style hypnosis where it's so kind of perfect but not perfect, but designed in that way that it kind of brings you into that trance. Whereas the hypnosis that music has on me is more like, you know, a bunch of people are dancing in a circle, and it's kind of like that like tribe dancing where like they fall under a spell and they're dancing and there's disjointed movements, and it's like that like coming to spiritual enlightenment moment.
Yeah, but like I like songs that are like hype, but if it like the way the songs build and drop is something that I pay a whole lot of attention to. Like if a song is hype all the way through and there's not a point where it's quiet and then it builds up and then drops in a way that like I can what's the song on Sign of the Times that I was talking about with?
What do you mean?
They were talking about it was the rock song where they were talking about like Jesus or something.
Oh, The Cross.
Yeah, that song. I felt kind of disappointed when I listened to it because it had this great build throughout, but it didn't really hit me a certain way. Like if a song's gonna hit me, then it needs to like punch me in the face.
No, that's kind of how I am. I'm actually kind of a mix of both your guys' opinions when it comes down to it. I agree with both what you guys have to say. When it comes to listening to music, for me, just every song, like, it depends on the mood I'm in, for what I'm listening to. But there's some songs that I'll listen to just when I might not be feeling as well. Some songs when I'm feeling better. It's the energy that I want to feel when it comes to listening to the music. And that is what keeps me listening to it, just the mood I'm in. And that's probably why what I listen to changes so much, is because we all feel different at different points in our life.
That's true. That's very much true.
All facts.
All facts, no printer.
All facts, no printer. That's my favorite thing now. I didn't make that up.
I know you. If you think that Hayden made that up, then you don't know anything.
I stole it from someone else.
Yeah, I know. But if you're listening to this and you think Hayden made that up, then you don't know anything.
But anyway, back to what we were getting into. So Michael listens to all these Pink Floyd albums, and then he comes to me. And so what I do is I design, and I guess I should probably go through them, and then you can go through the Kanye ones.
You should only go through the albums that I've listened to.
Yeah, and then when we pick it back up at a later date, we'll bring it back.
Minus Graffiti Bridge, because we haven't gone through the whole thing yet.
I'll mention that era, and I'll say where you're at.
Yeah.
Okay, so I kind of created through Prince's career about, I believe, 12 different eras of his music, spanning from really 1976 when he started in the industry. His first album didn't come out till 78, though, I acknowledge that, till he died in 2016, till his last album, which came out in December 2015. And so here's what I have as the kind of eras of Prince's music, which I took into account his personal life, the sound he was working on, the state in his career, his level of popularity, and his backing bands and who he was with, and just kind of the general feel of it all, of where he was at in his life. So the first era I have, which spans from 1976 to 1979, is the first Prince era containing 2 albums, is called Wunderkind. And for those of you, the vast majority of the world who doesn't speak German, Wunderkind is kind of the German word. It literally translates to wonder child, is a prodigy. So Prince, if you don't know, he got into the career super on. By the time he was, all of our age, he had already had released one studio album and was working on another one. And he kind of was really fronting that kind of like prodigy, young genius thing. And this era, Wunderkind, includes 2 albums, For You, which came out in 1978, which is his first album in which he produces the entire thing, does the entire thing by himself, and plays all 27 instruments. And the second is Prince, which is his self-titled album that came out in 1979. The second Prince era, which spans from 1980 to 1982, is what I call Rude Boy. And I call it Rude Boy because this was his super controversial, I'm an edgy synth funk, kind of mixed with punk, rock star wearing bikini briefs and trench coats era, trying to be kind of edgy, trying to be cool, controversial. And because he had a little badge that he'd wear on his with his trench coats that said Rude Boy on it. I think it really describes the era as a whole. And the albums on this era include Dirty Mind, which came out in 1980, Controversy, which came out in 1981, and 1999, which came out in 1982. The third Prince era spans from 1983, even though no album came out that year, but that's really when the Revolution was formed, to 1986 when the Revolution was disbanded, and it is called The Revolution as regards to his backing band of this era. And it includes 3 albums: Purple Rain, 1984, Around the World in a Day, 1985, Parade, 1986. The fourth Prince era, which spans from 1987 to 1989, which I call Gemini because that's kind of the alter ego theme that he was working on in this era, and explains the duality in sound and kind of lyrical content and spiritual and profane themes. Includes Sign of the Times, 1987, The Black Album, which came out which was recorded in mid-1987 but was released 1994, Love Sexy, which came out in 1988, and Batman, which came out in 1989. And the last era we're going to talk about today, which spanned from 1990 to 1993, which Michael is one album into at this point, is called The New Power Generation, also in regards to his new backing man at the time. And it contains Graffiti Bridge, 1990, Diamonds and Pearls, 1991, and Love Symbol album, which is really just the symbol, which came out in 1992.
I wooed on all the albums that I really, really, really liked.
Yeah, I could tell.
Kanye West has 11 albums. I kind of broke it into eras, but it doesn't really make sense to talk about it in eras because just by nature of the fact that there's less albums. The albums Kanye West has out, if you don't know, which most of you probably do, The College Dropout.
That's not true.
Most people would know.
Not all Kanye West albums.
Really?
Yes.
No, most people.
Can you name all Kanye West albums, Brian?
I can't name all the albums. See, the way how I listen to music is I'll put it on my radio, like I'll go to Kanye radio, just listen to what's ever on there. I need to start listening to it by album, though.
That's what most people do.
Yeah, but most people can name.
That's what most people got time for.
The way that Kanye West is a cultural icon in this generation is that most people who at least listen to rap music,
I guarantee you that I'd say half of all people who listen to popular music cannot name a single Kanye West album.
I guarantee you, with beyond a shadow of a doubt, that's just not true.
Bet. I will survey this.
I mean, there's probably some people that will know. I think it's going to be half and half.
50%.
I don't think that's true. Anyway, the Kanye West albums are The College Dropout, Late Registration, Graduation, 808s and Heartbreak, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, Watch the Throne, which he did with Jay-Z, Cruel Summer, which he did with Good Music, Yeezus, The Life of Pablo, Ye, and Kid See Ghost, which he did with Kid Cudi.
Mm-hmm.
Brian, you ever listen to Kid Cudi?
Yeah, I have.
He's a good
That was
artist.
back in the days when I was hanging out with my buds all the time.
It's a good album. He's a good artist.
I can never hum like Kid Cudi can.
Kid Cudi with the hums. Anyway.
All right, so now we're kind of going to go through, because Michael and I have been working on this a while, and we've been ranking the albums. Rashad, would you like to go through your list first, or would you like me to
Bottom
go
of
through
the top or top to bottom? I feel like bottom of the top is a better way.
Bottom of the top, yeah. Do you want to go through Prince first or Kanye first?
And then Brian, I'm gonna let Brian choose. Brian, who do you want to go first?
Let's go with Prince first.
All right.
All right.
And if you know anything, or if you know any of the songs, tell us how you feel.
All right.
Yeah.
You are by far the most musical person here, and we definitely are very interested in your opinion.
Okay, so at the bottom I have the Black Album, just because I thought the Black Album sounded drunk and unfinished.
I also have the Black Album as my least favorite album of the ones he's listened to so far, because that album was created in anger and was created in angst. So for those of you who don't know, I mentioned the Black Album earlier. It was recorded in 1987, but it wasn't released until 1994 under contractual obligation, because 2 weeks before it was supposed to be released, Prince had a spiritual epiphany and declared the album being evil because of the negative messages on it. The album was created because he was angry at the music industry because he had just gotten out of a long-term relationship, and it had a really bad vibe to it. It's well-made music, but the message that he was putting out, I think, really wasn't what Prince was actually trying to go for, and it was just kind of this unfettered emotion, and it doesn't, for me, it does not represent who Prince was as an artist.
I felt that album was a little rushed as well.
Mm-hmm.
Dirty Mind is next up from the Black Album at number 12. I'm not going to mention Graffiti Bridge, so it's number 11. I'm not going to mention Graffiti Bridge because I haven't gone through that whole area yet. Dirty Mind is low on there just because, even though it was objectively a good album, I felt like a whole lot of it depended on, to me, it felt like it depended on shock value. Specifically, there's a song called Sister on there.
We're not going to talk about that song.
Point being that I don't like that song. That song really, really tanked the album for me.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. That song deserves to tank the album for me.
Dirty Mind is also in the same position on mine, because this is about where Michael and I stop agreeing, to be honest with you, on where the album's placed. I think Dirty Mind's a really, really good album, and it is a great album almost, and it's probably one of the most iconic Prince albums. Sister does in fact bring the album down, because that song was purely made for shock value.
It's so it's not even like it's a bad song. It's just
the
garbage.
lyrical content is garbage.
It's so garbage.
It's a good album. It's very experimental, and it's when Prince was kind of coming into his own sound of that weird synth funk vibe, kind of the Minneapolis sound that he created that he's kind of famous for from that era. But I will say that album was not mixed and produced to his normal standards, and it sounds like lacklusterly produced because it was meant to sound raw, kind of like demo tape basement kind of thing, not like a well-produced, well-oiled machine. For that particular reason, it was supposed to sound very raw as an album. I would put it higher, but it's true that one track does kind of tank it a bit. But I do genuinely enjoy the album. It's funky. It's funky.
Number 10 on my list is Parade. I feel like Parade, that if you don't know, is a soundtrack for the film Under the Cherry Moon. Parade is a pretty decent album.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say it's not good. There were a bunch of songs that I didn't like, and there were a bunch of songs that I thought were boring. Even though there were some songs that I really, really, really liked. And
Kiss.
Yeah, Kiss, for example, was one of the best Prince songs.
Kiss is one of Prince's most famous songs. Was a top 10 single, and some other good tracks from that album include Sometimes It Snows in April, which is an amazing ballad.
Venus de Milo,
which is an amazing instrumental track that just kind of exists.
I love instrumental music that's good.
We just listened to that track actually right before we started.
It's a great piano track.
It's great. I love instrumental music that moves me, and I felt like it moved me. But there was a lot of songs on there that I thought were boring, and then there were a few songs I just didn't like.
For me personally, with Parade, I think Parade is an interesting album. For me, I think this is also on the same. No, Parade is not that low on the list for me, but I do enjoy Parade because it kind of has this kind of like summer vibe, low key kind of just kind of, it feels light. It's not like a super heavy album. It just feels light, and I think it's really good for those particular situations. And I do enjoy the standout tracks on it. Really do mean a lot to me, and I think it's a great album. But it's not that low on the. It's still kind of lowish on the list in relativity to the rest of the albums, because the rest of the ones I am very, very fond of.
The next album on the list is Prince, which is his second album. I think Prince is a very solid album. It didn't really hit me a certain way, unfortunately. And there were a lot of great songs on there, like I Want to Be Your Lover and Bambi.
Bambi's a great song.
But overall it just wasn't powerful enough. I feel like part of that was because he was developing his sound. So it didn't really like hit me a certain way.
So my list differs from Michael Oswald. He has Parade just above Dirty Mind. I have For You, which is Prince's first album, and Michael really, 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 really enjoys For You, especially the last track, I'm Yours. But for me, that album doesn't sound like a Prince album almost, because it's his first album. He was just figuring out what to do. It sounds kind of like generic music. It doesn't really have that sort of Prince kind of edgy kick to it yet. It doesn't have that rhythm to it. It doesn't have that kind of edge that he had, and I think that really lowers it for me. It's a good album. It's really well produced. It has some amazing songs on there, but it just doesn't compare to the rest of Prince's discography. And after For You, I have Parade.
That kind of goes along with what we were saying, where like the first album, people are always trying to figure out their sound.
Then at number 8, I have the album Controversy, which I did thoroughly enjoy. There was one song on Controversy that I particularly just didn't really like that much. Annie Christian. I did not like that song. And it didn't ruin the album for me, but it just, it was like, I didn't like it. I didn't like the song at all.
I will say
it's not the reason that it lowered it. It also didn't hit me a certain way. Then once you start getting up above this is when albums start to kind of hit me a little bit more. But like this album just didn't really do it for me that much. Like I would listen to it again, but yeah, it was enough on it that it wasn't like, you know, it wasn't like it wasn't very coherent for me to like as a listen.
Yeah, I personally really enjoy Controversy, and it's actually somewhat high on my list. But I will say Annie Christian. Annie Christian is between Let's Work and the last track, Jack You Off, which are two super kind of upbeat songs. One being a kind of synth funk song, another being kind of like a nice little pop rock song. And it really kind of breaks up the consistency of the album. And I will say that Annie Christian's not a terrible song, but it's not a great song either. And I think I do agree that it's probably the worst track on that album, even though I really enjoy Controversy as a concept, as an album.
Number 7 on my list is that album For You. I understand why it would be low on people's lists. It doesn't really sound like a Prince album. It sounds kind of like, you know, he's trying to figure out his sound. But for somebody trying to figure out their sound, it's really fucking good.
That's true. It's very impressive.
Like most people trying to figure out their sound, it sounds kind of disjointed. For those of you who don't know, he made For You when he was 17.
Yeah, he was our age.
When I was 17, I had just made King of the World. I love King of the World, but it wasn't that. Yeah, For You, it was great. I like the first song. I like Soft and Wet. I like Baby. I like all the songs. The one that really hits me is the end song, I'm Yours, and it's just because the guitars in the beginning of that song are just
insane.
Like,
they're insane. They're absolutely
holy
insane.
Holy shit. Like, he's 17. He did all the instruments on this album.
And he was very talented.
Prince was immensely talented. And again, imagine this little 5'2" dude with his big 1978 afro in the studio, just shredding it on this guitar by himself.
It's a great little project right there. Number 6 on my list, we have 1999. I definitely very thoroughly enjoyed the album. The album feels very powerful just throughout it. All the songs on here I think are pretty good. Like all the songs just like it's a very good sound. It's a very like solid album. Like looking at the track list, it's not really songs that I don't like on here. Songs that hit me a little bit less, but all the songs are good. Little Red Corvette, 1999 is a great song. Lady Cab Driver, Automatic, Something in the Water I thought was super interesting. I think it was just a great little project that I really enjoyed listening to.
It's not a little project, it's a double LP. It's a pretty big album.
I say little just to be, just for the word little. It's a good word. What do you think about the word little, Brian?
The word little? I don't really use it too much for too many things.
I use little to describe a whole lot of things. It's a nice little vibe. It's a nice little album.
Okay, I could see it like that when you like sometimes you think of little as like a negative word. It's
Yeah.
kind of more like use it as a
I use it
positive
to make use it to make sentences and statements more casual.
a little bit more casual.
Yeah. Yeah, like that.
So for me, 1999, my favorite track off there is the last track, International Lover, which is like one of Prince's best ballads in my opinion. And I think really this might be 1999 was a super prosperous album, but it's also a super influential album in like when it comes to 80s synth funk music. And it really brought Prince more to like a household name with singles like 1999 and Little Red Corvette. And you can hear a lot of artists, and a lot of artists I've heard reference this album as being like, holy shit, this kind of got me onto this certain type of music.
At number 5, I have Batman. Batman, I think was a really solid album.
We're starting to get to the whoo.
Yeah, the whoo. Yeah, I mean, I ain't whoo for Batman, but I thought a lot of songs on Batman, it was just super interesting. Like, I'm not really a huge soundtrack music kind of person, especially if it's not a soundtrack for something that you've created. But like songs like Lemon Crush, for example, I thought was super good. That song might have brought the album a bit higher on the list. I felt like Batman was super interesting and super creative, and especially given that it was a soundtrack album, I thought that it did a good job. The only song that I felt like wasn't like super interesting to listen to was Bat Dance.
And Vicky Waiting.
Yeah, but Bat Dance specifically, I thought Bat Dance was a bit too disjointed for me to like tune into it all the way. But I still thought it was an excellent song. I thought it was an excellent album.
Batman, I think, is not one of Prince's best albums personally, but I think it is a definitely well compact and decent album in relevance to Prince. In relevance to the entire world of music, it's a pretty great album. In relevance to Prince, it's not. I would not say it's one of his top 10 albums for sure, but there are some tracks on there that are really good. And actually, this is where Michael and I was very surprised. I'm not a big fan of the song Lemon Crush. I think it's okay, but I definitely don't have the same praise for it as Michael does.
I really like that song. At number 4 on my list, I have Around the World in a Day. It's just a fucking great album. I just love that album a whole lot. Like, it's very, 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 very well put together, very well orchestrated. Like, it's like the kind of album that when you listen to it, just kind of, it has a certain kind of feeling to it, Like it's just very, very, very high energy, very nice psychedelic kind of vibe. I really enjoyed.
I really enjoy that album too. It's a really important album to me because I have a lot of emotional attachment to that one. And it just kind of, when I think of that album, I always just think of like sitting in my backyard looking out onto like a pond near to where I live. And just kind of that summer vibe and psychedelia and it's a very emotionally diverse album as well. And kind of going through that range of emotions with that weird psychedelic sound that he had.
It's an album that kind of paints a picture.
It really is. And literally for that, you say that, but in the actual LP pressing, it's a gatefold. When you open up, there's this watercolor portrait of a landscape and a rainbow and like this forest.
He knows how to create the vibe.
It's a very vibe-filled album.
And then the top 3 that I have on here are kind of interchangeable, just because depending on how I'm feeling at any given time, they fluctuate. So the top 3 albums in no particular order, just because for me to put them in a particular order just kind of feels weird, are Love Sexy, Sign of the Times, and Purple Rain.
Love Sexy is, by the way, on the top of the list, just so you should know.
On top of my list? Yeah, but I specifically said that I'm not putting them in a particular order for the reason that they're just...
But Love Sexy is on the top of the list.
At the top of the list as of right now and right here. But sometimes Purple Rain's at the top of the list, and sometimes Sign of the Times at the top of the list.
That's fair.
To go to individualize each of them, Purple Rain is the album that I connect to the most because, and I know it's a very I know that's like a super mainstream reason, but I've had the most exposure to that album just growing up around it. My mom's a huge fan of Purple Rain. There's not a song on this album that I don't like. Like this is like, it's like, this is definitely the most listenable of all of them to me.
It's the most pop for sure.
That like I can just throw it on at any given time and I'm always gonna feel it.
It's always a good entry level one as well too.
That's
for
right.
anyone who hasn't heard.
I love it. I love from beginning to end. It's just a great album. Sign of the Times also is great. Sign of the Times, I feel like super. It's just a vibe. Like I love Sign of the Times all the way through. It's a great album. You know, there are songs I think are a little bit that hit me a little bit less hard than other songs, but at the same time, the songs that super hit me hard, songs like Sign of the Times, songs like the Ballad of Dorothy Parker, like Adore, just all like Starfish and Coffee. The whole thing is just really good. It's like a really super solid project. And then Love Sexy, I feel like, is just excellent. It feels like it's a masterpiece. And it's everything about it, everything about the way it's produced, like the message, everything about all the songs on there, it feels very clear-headed, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, well, so I'm gonna go over those 3 albums, then I'm gonna go through the order in which I go. So Purple Rain for me was the first album I ever bought on my own. It's like I got my little iTunes gift card out because that's by the time I was old enough to listen to that kind of music. iTunes was a thing, and I got my little iTunes gift card out. That's the first thing I bought, and I was super excited about it. And that album I do have a really deep emotional connection to, because for being the pop album that it is super emotionally like intelligent in the way it talks about emotions and the way it talks about human relationships. And there's a song for every emotion on that album, because you know you get songs like Let's Go Crazy, which is just like a fun let's party song. You get songs like The Beautiful Ones, which are about, you know, relationships and conflict and love and all that stuff. You get songs like Purple Rain, which is kind of like The Beautiful Ones in its message, but it's super complex. And whereas The Beautiful Ones is more of like a piano ballad, Purple Rain's like this kind of, you know, rock ballad that's Prince is so famous for. And it's that album just is it's regarded as one of the best Prince albums, and a lot of people call it the best Prince album for a reason. I'll say that.
I think it was one of his proudest moments.
Yeah, and Prince might have not been proud of it afterward, because he got very upset with being associated with it, because he was always trying to move on. But he did realize, very much so toward the end of his life, that was a pinnacle moment for him, that he really created something beautiful there. Sign of the Times. I think Sign of the Times might be Prince's like actual like magnum opus in terms of his like ability to create like such a diverse and talented and well-made album. Because Sign of the Times, Michael, if like there's no genre on it. Like Purple Rain, you can kind of describe as kind of pop rockish, kind of Love Sex you can kind of describe as like kind of psychedelic funk, whereas Sign of the Times literally has like everything fucking on it you can imagine.
I think that what's great about that album, and a lot of great albums that I really love, is that they're defined less by the genre and more by the vibe.
Mm-hmm. Sign of the Times, you know, it hits every single possible emotion you can think of, and one of my favorite tracks is Adore on there, and It's Gonna Be a Beautiful Night and Hot Thing are all just like those 3 songs I mentioned all have a different complete vibe to them and all have a different thing about them, and it's just an amazing album. And Love Sexy, which is probably my second, maybe even first at some days, Prince album of all time. Love Sexy, which is, for those of you who don't know, all one track, actually 9 songs that are all recorded as one track and that are supposed to be listened in continuous order. That is like his gospel album where he like really just comes clean. It's a very honest album that really defines, you know, some positive emotions, and that is a feel-good album. You listen to Love Sexy and you'll probably feel pretty good after listening
At
to it.
that time, I feel like he realized a bunch of stuff, especially with what he wanted to do with his music.
Mm-hmm. That's the album that was created after the creation of the Black Album, and is the spiritual opposite to it in a lot of ways. But yeah, so you heard Michael's list, but my list, since I'm going to finish it up right here, goes more like this. So I have the Black Album at the bottom, then Dirty Mind, For You, Parade, Batman, 1999, Prince, Around the World in a Day, Controversy, Purple Rain, Sign of the Times, and Love Sexy. So mine differs from his, but there are some similarities. And there's one last album that Rashad has listened to that is in the New Power Generation era, is the first song of that hasn't been put on the list yet, really, because he hasn't finished that year.
Yeah, it's Graffiti Bridge, and Graffiti Bridge I also thought was super solid when I listened to it. It's within that kind of range where they kind of fluctuate between the top 4, because I felt like it was also super powerful. Like throughout the album, all the sounds were just good. Like all the songs kind of hit me in a certain way, and they all hit me differently, but like all of them just felt very focused and very refined, and I really appreciated that.
I also really love Graffiti Bridge. I don't think I love it as much as Michael does in Relativity, but that's also because I know more albums that come on down the road that I have closer emotional attachment to. But Graffiti Bridge really is. It's the sister album, really, to Love Sexy and that kind of content and theme and musical. It's the sonic similarity.
And now it's time to talk about
Yay.
Big Yay, Kanye West. So Hayden has his list of the 11 Kanye albums.
All right, so my list. Do you just want me to run through the list, or do you want me to go album by album?
Go album by album because I went album by album, so you got to
right.
do the same thing.
So number 11 is Ye, which is a 24-minute album, and I listened to in a car ride. And I thought, there were some high points and low points on there, but I think really what puts it at the bottom of my list is that I don't remember really much from it. And if the album has that little of an emotional impact on me, and if it doesn't really, kind of get in my head and make me feel something, then it's gonna fall at the bottom, and that's where it goes.
If you want to enjoy that album, I feel like you have to listen to it a few times. It's hard to catch the details on the first listen, but if you go through it and listen to it a few times, you get a little bit more of an appreciation for it. But it's not one of the best.
Yeah, no, I feel like Ye is definitely at the bottom of my list on account of the fact that I just feel like Kanye is super good. I think he's great. I think he's a great artist. And I feel like Ye didn't do a great job of illustrating how great of an artist he is. And that's really all that comes down to. I like Ye. I listen to Ye. I listen to Ye a lot, actually. Like, I don't listen to it all the time because it's not really as listenable as his other albums off the bat, off the cuff. Like, and it wasn't as trailblazing. It felt rushed, and I like the album. I love a whole lot of songs on there. Not a whole lot, because not a whole lot of songs on there. I love a few of the songs on there, but it's just like it doesn't really do it. It doesn't really like if you want to know the genius of Kanye West, you don't start with Ye.
Yeah. I feel like how it is he wanted to have a lot of fun, but in as short amount of time as possible when he was making that album. And I feel that's probably why it turned out the way it did. There's still some bangers on there.
Yeah.
But there's low points.
Yeah.
Next on my list at number 10 is Kids See Ghost, which this upsets Rashad that I put it so low on my list.
I mean, I have it low on my list too, but I think Kids See Ghosts definitely deserves a whole lot of smoke, a whole lot of recognition. Like, it's a great album, I think. Me
personally, I kind of feel the same way about that I did about Ye, is that, it's good. I really enjoyed some of the sounds on there. I really enjoyed a lot of the way he arranged samples and the way he worked with Kid Cudi, but I just didn't feel that emotional attachment as where I have with other Kanye albums, and that kind of release that I talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I feel like Kids See Ghosts is solid. If you like Kid Cudi, Kids See Ghosts, it feels more like a Kid Cudi album than it does a Kanye West album. Kids See Ghosts is a good album. It's solid. Like, there's not a bad moment on there. Every time I listen to it, I go through it. And the reason it's kind of low on my list is just because there are albums that I like more, but I enjoy listening to it, and I've never felt like it was weak in any moment.
Next on my list is Watch the Throne, which he made with Jay-Z.
Also mad about his ranking on that.
He's very mad. He's going to be even more mad about the next one. I Watch the Throne. I attribute all of these last three albums to kind of the same thing. It was good, and there were some moments that I really, really liked. But with Watch the Throne, I just, there were some moments where I'm like, I get what you're trying to do there, but I don't think you fully worked that out yet. I don't think you wrote. I think that lyric could have been better. I think that one thing could have been better, but it just didn't tap into the emotional wire. There was just no connection.
I fully disagree. I think Watch the Throne is fucking great. I feel like Watch the Throne is like legendary Kanye West, a legendary Kanye West project. The whole moment, the whole Kanye West Jay-Z thing, and they're both flexing, but they're both smart flexing. They're both like I feel like it's a genius album. It's everything that I would want from a Kanye West Jay-Z project, especially with both artists being where they were at the time that they made it.
I thought it was okay.
I thought it was great.
Yeah, I mean, I can feel the disappointment. If you want to hear Rashad get even more disappointed, number 8 on my list is Yeezus.
Fuck you, Hayden.
Oh boy.
Can I get a big? Can we get a big fuck you, Hayden, in the chat?
No, don't say that. That will actually get me assaulted on the street. The reason I have Yeezus so low, which I really, really, really dug the first track, in the way that he uses electronic music on the first track, but that album, I feel like musically it was really, 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 really good, and it would have been way higher if he had kind of changed the theme up. If that album had been more enlightening and less discouraging, I'd say, and what its overall feel was, I would have enjoyed it a lot more.
I strongly disagree with that sentiment for the reason that I feel like Yeezus isn't necessary. While it's not necessarily empowering, I don't think it's necessarily discouraging. I think that Yeezus is by far the most emotional Kanye West album.
I didn't feel good after listening to Yeezus. Like I didn't feel that much, but I just felt like I
feel
needed to shower a little bit, you know.
I feel like Yeezus is indulgent, but I feel like it's beautifully indulgent. I feel like Yeezus, I have so much praise for Yeezus. Yeezus is one of my favorite Kanye West albums and one of my favorite just albums to listen to all the time. It's one of my go-to albums because it's so raw. Like everything about it is just. I love Yeezus. I love Yeezus so much.
He loves Yeezus more than he loves me.
That's probably not true. Yeezus is great. It's like everything that I could like. It's great. It's just great. It's innovative. It's experimental, and I can understand why some people wouldn't like Yeezus. But I feel like Yeezus is the kind of album that is like that's kind of like where a line is drawn in the sand, where it's like if you fuck with Yeezus, you fuck with Yeezus, and if you don't, then you just don't. But,
ouch.
It's another album I had a lot of good times just listening to with my friends. That's why I kind of like it.
Yeah.
Number 6 on my list is Kanye West presents Good Music, Cruel Summer.
I'm okay with that ranking. I'm very okay with that ranking.
Yeah, I liked a lot of the instrumentals on that one. I feel like it had a good kind of groove to it. I really fucked with a lot of the tracks. But again, I think it's a memory thing. It's like if I don't walk away from that album feeling a particular way, it's not going to get that high up on the list.
I love Cruel Summer just on account of the fact that it's like a solid vibe all the way through. And I feel like I feel like for what it is, if I were ranking it based on the Kanye-ness of the albums, then it would rank a whole lot lower. But but Cruel Summer is like, it's a compilation album of artists from the Good Music label, from the Good Music camp. It's great at doing that. It does its job, and I appreciate that a whole lot. Looking at my list, I realized that I like that album a whole lot more than I thought I did, just because it's just great. Like I can't think of a song that I just genuinely like would even consider skipping on there.
Next on my list at number 5 is Graduation, which I thought I was gonna like way more when I was starting to listen to it, because it just got, the first track kind of got me in that place, and I was like, ooh, I kind of feel for this. And then as it went on, I was just like, yeah, okay, it's a good album. It's a really, really, really good album, but it didn't nail it home with me all the way.
And I will say that I disagree, but I also don't disagree, because I think Graduation is a masterpiece. I think Graduation objectively is one of the best Kanye West albums of all time. It's super low on my list because I don't really vibe with it the same way. When I vibe with it, but I can't consistently vibe with it just because it doesn't really do something. It doesn't really do anything for me in the same way. I love it's very innovative, and it was a great moment. It was an excellent moment for Kanye West's career. One of the most important moments I think that he's ever had, like within his career, but it just didn't really do it the same way for me.
Next on my list is The Life of Pablo, which I really fucked with. The Life of Pablo, like a lot of its message was more like good. It kind of made me feel good after listening to it. It had a lot of good moments, come to Jesus moments kind of. I feel like if you combined the kind of feel goodness with like the sound of Yeezus would probably be my favorite Kanye album.
What you don't understand is that wouldn't work, because Yeezus is all about.
It wouldn't work. I understand that.
But I love Pablo. I think Pablo's a great vibe as well.
It's actually my favorite album.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. There's just been lots of times where I've been just out in the town. Father Stretch My Hands comes on.
Mm-hmm.
All good vibes go
it's
from
all
there.
Good. It's like you can't not smile when you hear them songs. Like,
I smile. Shit, straight up. Then next on my list is Late Registration, which Late Registration I wasn't enjoying at the beginning. But then you get to the latter half of the album, and Hey Mama comes on. I was on a train when I listened to that song for the first time. I was going to straight up crying on that fucking train. Like, I was like, damn. That song blew me away, and it really just redeemed that whole album for me. And the second half of the album was way better than the first half. And don't forget, Phi Broke represent.
Yes. Oh, my God.
I love Late Registration. Late Registration, I feel like, is one of the best Kanye moments of all time.
For those of you who don't know, Rashad and I do a bit in public where I'll be like, broke. and he'll be like, "Broke."
Yeah, the Broke Phi Broke chant.
And we'll do the whole thing.
If you don't know the Broke Phi Broke chant, then
I'll link it.
There's probably so many people out there that do that.
Yeah, and like,
that's
like
great. I would join that. No, I wouldn't join that fraternity.
People who will be with in public will be giving us the most horrified look as we go through the entire fucking chant in public.
Yeah, it's great.
It's amazing.
Now, how many people do you think try to eat cereal with a fork after that?
Like, hey, they got a good point. Save that milk.
We broke.
Oh shit, that's good. The next on my list is number 3, The College Dropout,
which I think is valid.
It's valid.
That's a very
it's valid
point. I don't personally put The College Dropout super high on my list. I personally think late registration is leagues better than The College Dropout, but that's also just because I'm picky. I think The College Dropout.
No way, you're picky. I had no idea.
I think The College Dropout's a great Kanye moment. Similarly to Graduation, it's a great moment. It's just it's not as good. Like, I feel like it's just not as good. That's just the way that I feel.
I like The College Dropout because I'm listening to it. And I'm just like, I kind of feel good. Like, it made me feel good. Kind of had a good groove.
It's a smile album.
Smile album. I like the Smile albums, except for actually the first one on my list is probably pretty dark, but that's beyond the point.
I don't think it's that dark. It's just not a smile album.
Yeah. So the next 2 on my list, I'd actually say are interchangeable depending on what mood I'm in. Right now, I'd say I like My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, but it's because I haven't listened to 808s in some time. But technically, number 2 is My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, which I think is just like a really, 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 really well made album.
Don't get me started on that album, bro. I will talk about that album for hours.
I think it's the one he's taken his time the most on.
Definitely.
That album is fucking. So if you don't know, I have a list. Of top 5 albums across the board. They are like my favorite albums of all time. It is in no particular order: Blonde by Frank Ocean, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy by Kanye West, Good Kid, Mad City by Kendrick Lamar, Forever Forever Go by Bon Iver, and The Wall by Pink Floyd. If it's in this top 5 category, then I will fight you on that album. I'm not gonna fight anyone on any album, really. Like, I'll argue, but I will fight you on this album. If you don't have this album at least in your top 3 when you're talking about Kanye West albums, then don't fucking look at me.
You heard it here first. If you're trying to
if you're
be
trying
on
to,
those albums, square up.
Yeah, if you have anything bad to say about any of those albums, come find me and we can chop it up.
I'm gonna record that and try and monetize it on YouTube. Just so you know, I want to see that fight. And
I'm not gonna fight anyone. Let's just be clear. I'm not threatening physical harm. I'm threatening some harsh words. You will get harsh words if you don't respect those albums.
And if you piss him off hard enough, I bet he'll break your nose, as a courtesy.
Probably not, but like, it depends on my mood at any given time.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't depend on my mood at any given time, Hayden. I'm not a violent person.
There's gonna be some quiet guy in the comments section. It's just gonna be like,
I
don't agree with
Yeah,
that.
is better than My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. That's an easy way to make me mad.
Ooh. What if I say it and I don't mean it?
I would probably hang up.
So you're gonna be calling me one day, and I'm gonna have to go do something and be like, I need to end this phone call. What do I say? Yeah, it's better than My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and just fucking hangs up.
Yeah, that'd be it. It'd be like, no, it's not. Don't fuck with me right now.
And my favorite Kanye West album, and one that really just I dug and spoke to me, and I really just enjoyed, is 808s and Heartbreak.
It's a solid album. That album's got me through a whole lot.
Why would you say that's my favorite?
I think you like songs. I think you like albums where people sing more than albums where people rap.
Yep, that's. I listen to Prince. All facts, no Prince. Like
yeah,
shit.
But 808s and Heartbreak is a great album. It's a great album for any, like, if you're feeling something, if you're really in a certain kind of feeling, it allows you to kind of be cathartic in a way that's not necessarily negative. Where I feel like Yeezus and 808s are more similar than anyone will ever give them credit for, in that they're both super experimental. They're both a departure from everything he was doing at any given at the time that he made them, and they're both incredibly cathartic. The difference becomes that 808s and Heartbreak is more sadness than it is anger.
Yeah, which I am more for. I'm not really a particularly.
I'm a pretty angry person.
I'm kind of an angry person, but I'm more sad than anything else, really.
I just go with the flow.
Yeah. Brian's just like, I'm just chilling here,
Like, people have opinions. Nah, I'm just kidding.
No. My list is from the bottom to the top. Yay, Graduation, Kids See Ghosts, The College Dropout, Watch the Throne, The Life of Pablo, Late Registration, Cruel Summer, 808s and Heartbreak, Yeezus, and The Holy Grail, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy.
Damn, The Holy Grail. Why is it holy?
It's fucking great. If you know, look, I will literally, like, if you don't like this album, then you haven't listened to it right. This is the kind of album that's like, you need to shut the fuck up and listen to it. You know, there's some albums where you can listen to it and like be on some other shit. No, this is an album you have to shut the fuck up and listen to it. If you're telling me that you've heard Runaway and you think that Kanye has made a better song than Runaway, then kindly get the fuck out of my face. That song is a masterpiece.
I really want to say something to provoke you right now.
Don't do it.
Can I?
You can, but I would advise that you don't.
Why?
Because you gotta square up.
Oh my gosh, I could say something so bad. Can I just say it and you have no emotional attachment to what I'm gonna say, just so I can say it?
Let's hear it.
Sister is better than Runaway.
And that's the podcast, folks. It's been a good ride. You know, we're done. Fucking cut it off.
No more outrospection at all.
The podcast is over. This was the last episode.
It's the last time Hayden and Michael.
This is the last time anyone's gonna see me alive. To be honest.
You can walk home, Hayden.
No, the podcast isn't over.
And that's the end of the podcast, folks. We're done. I'm not entertaining this bullshit.
Not forever though.
We're not done forever. We'll see you again next time.
Yeah.
We're gonna end this off with Brian had released that song with his band called Windows, and so we're gonna play that song.
If you guys end up liking the song, we have our social media. We're on Facebook. Just type in Whüzy, WHU with the 2 dots over it, ZY.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll link it below.
The umlauts, and I will link everything below. Check out Brian's an amazing person. He's super awesome for letting us record.
Thank you for coming on the podcast, guys.
Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Anytime, guys.
And that's that.
Woo!
looking for something to know, looking for a reason to prove my treason. I'm a nice kid, I don't bite, but I like to live this way. Until you know what it's like to wanna put on a little show. I guess you don't.